So you really got to make your selection pretty clean. That's actually part of the stupid chicken. As is that. As is this. Come in, get that. You do need to zoom in. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to see stuff like this, right? And get rid of that. That's not part of the stuff that I want. Neither is that. I am going to go into that dumb dialog just so I can really see what my edges look like. And they're not bad. And if I go to black and white, I can kind of see a little bit more. Like it's going to pick up this dumb thing here. I don't want that, so I'm holding Option and clicking on that stuff with my quick select tool to get rid of it.
It's like broccoli, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to look like broccoli. I can try Smart Radius, and that actually seems to work. That seemed to soften up the edges enough to give me a pretty good mask there. So I'm okay with that. And I'm going to hit OK. You could play with it more if you wanted to. Remember, I outputted to selection there. So again, just make sure we understand. Always keep this to output to selection. Anything else is broken. From here, I need to cut this thing out. So we're going to duplicate the background and apply the mask. Now it's cut out. I'm going to rename this. Go ahead and rename this Drumstick so I don't lose it. Now, I'm going to, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. In my experience, the easiest way to do this is to click on the Move tool, click on the object itself, like somewhere in the center of the object. Move it to the tab, the next end, keeping everything held down. The image will open, and then you just let go.
I think it looks a little out of place.
Yeah, it does. The other way, and this way may not, you have to move the tabs around. You rip the tab down like that, take the layer here, and move it over. Either way is fine. You can also, if you have the layer selected, edit. No, you can't. I think you can copy the layer.
You maybe can't.
File.
Yeah, don't worry about it. The other way is just going to be too complicated. Either use your Move tool, grab it, and then just let it go, or take the layer, rip the tab down, take the layer, move it over. Yep, and we're going to have to resize. All right, so I'm just going to use my Move tool. That one seems to work pretty well, and then let it go. Now we got to zoom out. So now, with the Move tool selected, this may or may not be checked, Show Transform Controls. If it's not, then you can't adjust the size. If it is, well then we can adjust the size. Now I'm just going to use my anchor points like I've used in almost any other program to rotate it, right? To shrink it. If I hold Shift and click on one of these edges, it's going to keep things proportionate.
Recommended.
Which I recommend. Otherwise, if you let go, you're going to make things look weird, right? Fat chicken bones, small chicken bones, etc. You see how the bounding box has these solid lines around it? If I try to do anything else right now, it's not falling in. It won't let me. You see I'm trying to click here, I'm trying to do other things. It's not, there it goes. It's not letting me do anything. That's because I have not executed the transformation. I haven't confirmed the transformation. You either do that by hitting Enter, clicking the check up here, or if you don't want to do it, you hit Escape, or you hit No. And then it sets it back to where it was. With the Move tool, you have your basic transform controls. You can rotate it, and you can shrink it. That's it. That's not always gonna be sufficient enough to get this to look correct.
Light.
We also have some lighting issues. Right? So that's not bad. That's getting there. But I'm missing what? What's wrong with the way that this chicken bone was shot versus the way, let's say I'm looking at the pear.
Color.
Side, the hair has side wiring.
I don't.
How is this shot? What angle?
Straight down.
Yep. How's this shot?
Side.
Yeah, not straight down, right? Straight down. This is not straight down. So this is where we have to start transforming things to match the shape, the size, the angle a little bit better. Under Edit, we have different transform controls. We have skew, distort, perspective, and warp. Skew. You take this, it skews it. Right? Up and down.
Almost just like
Okay? It does a little, that's skew.
I know it doesn't.
Distort is a little strange. You start moving in the corners, and it starts stretching things around. So this one I can actually kind of get a little bit of that dimension that I'm looking for. And then last one, or maybe last one, or perspective. Perspective and skew are pretty similar, I think. Chicken bone. Oh, I got all messed up there. Start over. Edit, transform, perspective. I don't really need to mess with it too much, that's probably good. And then the last one, edit, transform, warp. This one's weird. You can kind of see these little balls here. These are anchor points, and they move stuff around. Right? There's really no strategy to how this works. You just sort of mess with stuff until you're like, that looks good. And the more you do it, the more you mess around with your transform controls, the better things are gonna be. So let's say I was happy with how that guy looked. I was good with that chicken bone, and I was okay with it being there. What was one of the other things you guys said that was a little bit off about this?
The shadow,
Needs a shadow, but before that,
the lighting.
lighting. What can we do to fix the lighting?
Mask.
What did you guys just do?
Dodge and burn.
Dodge and burn.
Yeah.
What's going to be an easier method here? Making 2 curves layers or making that 50% gray layer? 50% gray layer. So we're going to make a layer, new, layer. Overlay, fill with 50% neutral gray color, okay. And we'll say DB chicken. Now here's where we have to do something a little bit. No, we just have to make sure that we do this. We have to create what's called a clipping mask. And the reason that we do that is so that it applies only to these pixels. So right now, if I use my black brush and I start painting,
Whoa.
right, it goes everywhere. If I only want it to apply to that chicken bone, I'm gonna hold Option, go in between my 2 layers, and click. Now it's only applying to that chicken bone. That is called a clipping mask, because this layer clips to the pixels that are being shown here. Does that make sense? Okay, so you would do your thing. Layer, new, layer, overlay, fill with 50%, hit OK. And then let's say you did some stuff to it. So how is the lighting? What needs to be what? What needs to be dark?
Max energy.
Yeah, so down around here needs to be a little bit darker. I'm gonna do this kind of heavy. And then kind of on this side needs to be lighter, right? Well, that's too light. So to control that, I control the brush. So we make that a little bit lighter, maybe this side a little bit lighter as well. Flip it back to black, maybe make this side a little bit darker over here, over here.
It's still not.
No, not quite. And then we hit our clipping mask to make sure that we're not out on the plate. And then the last little thing that we have to do for this one is add a shadow. Shadow is relatively easy for this one. And that's probably all we're gonna be able to do today. We'll get into the second shadow technique next week. All you have to do is go to layer, layer style, drop shadow. You bring up this little dialog, and it has drop shadow. We have what are our blending modes, but multiply is what we want to begin with. The easiest way to control this is go to the actual image, click on it, and you can move your shadow around.
Oh, wow.
That's the work of the devil right there.
So you're gonna match it up as best you can to kind of the angle and the way that is. What else is wrong with this shadow though?
It's the wrong color.
Okay, so how are we gonna fix the color? We click the color swatch here,
And you can.
and you just click on the shadow color here. It may not be as thick. Well, that's opacity. We increase the opacity. It may not be as far. We move the distance. But all this stuff, the distance, and angle and whatnot, can be controlled by clicking on it. That's easier to me. To actually click on it and move it around.
Right.
Yeah, we're way over here.
It's creeping me out.
Flying chicken. So you move it around. Spread, just kind of look at what the shadow. Spread is that, I don't know, it's kind of the edges of it.
Hard
filling
light
it out.
versus soft light.
Yeah. Size, same thing, how dissipated it is. So like how thick the edges or strong the edges are. Just try to do your best to match up the shadow that you have there. The contour, don't mess with it. There's a bunch of these, but like, again, like, okay, maybe you use this one at some point, maybe you use that one, but like the difference between these two are pretty subtle. And you know, I don't know why you use any of those.
It
but-
almost looks like Nuremberg.
yeah, I don't really understand that, but this is fine, you know, so the first one is typically fine. Noise is how scattered it is, or whether there's noise in it. So if you're trying to match the shadow, right? So if we were to zoom in on this particular shadow, there is noise, right? So we want to make sure that we don't have a just totally clean shadow. We want to add a little bit of noise to it. So yeah, about 8.
Can you match the exact shadow or
What do
no?
you mean?
Like the color and everything that's going on in there? Like the noise, can you match the noise?
I mean, that's pretty close. I'm not trying to do a great job here.
Is
It's
there a
work-
way
I mean,
you
like
can
not
make it-
manually, just like by copy one and then just like paste it on the other? No.
Not really.
Is there a way you can use part of that shadow, like cut the rest of it off?
No.
No.
And that's the drawback to this particular method, the drop shadow method. You are sort of locked in to how Photoshop does the drop shadow.
Okay.
So I can't mask this, I can't cut half of this off, I can't do it. This is the shadow that I get, and that is what I get to play with. So it works for stuff like this, where your lighting's relatively simple, you have like kind of a shot that's down, but it's not gonna work so well when we have things that are a little bit awry. So, I want you guys to do this real quick.
Right.
I'm gonna run through it again. And you can take notes or you can try to follow along with me.
We're gonna take it out.
Huh?
Right.
Yeah, you gotta cut